Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Vanessa if you are new here. Now in this week's video, I'm going to be talking about my experience in college as a Catholic conservative. Now, if you came to this video for like really juicy stories, I don't have them for you. Now, I have experienced many things in college being a conservative, but I'm not going to like base every occurrence I had because I was a conservative because I really don't like when people do that when they go like, "Oh, this happened to me because I'm a woman," or "This happened to me because I'm this or that." I don't want to go like every single time a professor looked at me weird or gave me an F, it was because I was a conservative, because honestly, I don't think that that's the reasoning. So I'm just going to be picking and choosing some stories that I think are notable to mention to you all that I think that maybe you will benefit from, or just something to rant about, because some of the stuff, as I think about it, it's just very strange as to why professors in college think that they can get away with stuff like this. So we're going to be talking about it here. Now, the reason why this video is being posted is because you guys asked for it. But a main reason why you guys asked for it was because I posted a video around 2 months ago talking about how one of my college professors called me out for being pro-life. If you haven't seen that video, I suggest checking it out. I really enjoyed that video. A lot of you guys enjoyed it as well. So I'll have that video linked down below. Now, the reason why I'm making this video now versus making it a while back was because I have just finished college and I've just received my diploma. I got a bachelor's degree in communication studies, and I've wanted to make a video about my college experience for a while now, but I've been a little bit afraid about posting a video about it and not being able to get my diploma because of it. But since I have my diploma, since I'm a graduate, now I feel more comfortable talking about it. And I'm really happy that I waited this time, because things that I thought were crazy and important back then, honestly, I look back and I'm just like, who cares? People disagree with you. Teachers are going to say stupid stuff. You gotta get over it. And so I'm happy that I'm making this video now, looking at it from an outsider's perspective, so that I can give you guys a video and information that's not based off emotion, but just telling you a story about my experience in college. So to tell you guys a little bit more about myself, just in case you guys are new here, I am 22 years old. I live in Los Angeles, California, and I am half Mexican, a quarter Swedish, and a quarter French. My grandparents are from Mexico, and this is notable in one of my stories. That's why I mention it here now. So I live in Los Angeles, California. I went to two different colleges. I went to a junior college, which is a public college, and I went there for 3 years from 2015 to 2018. And then I went to California State University from 2018 until 2020 when I got my degree. So this kind of gives you guys a little bit of a timeline. So during the time that I was in college, President Trump was elected into office, and many different things happened in the world. So think back to 2015 and 2020, think about all the world occurrences that had happened and how that may have impacted my experiences in college. But nonetheless, let us get into my experiences in college as a conservative. Now, I have always been very vocal about my opinion. This is something that I've done since I was really young. I remember one of the earliest times was in second grade. I was telling everyone about if I could vote for someone, because it was a year of the election, if I could vote for someone, this is who I would vote for. I've always been very vocal about my opinions, and I've always based my opinions off facts. I grew up listening to Mark Levin. Now, I'm not going to say I grew up in a Republican household. My parents weren't very vocal about politics. I have always just been really vocal about politics. I used to think I was going to get into politics when I was younger. Now I'm realizing that that's not the world for me. But I wanted to be in politics when I was younger because I really enjoy arguing things. I'm opinionated in a good way where my opinions are based by facts. I'm not ignorant. I don't not listen to everyone. I like hearing other people's opinions and sides, but I know what I believe and I stand firm in my belief because I know why I believe and how I believe it, and I have facts to back it up. So I've always been very vocal in my opinions, and this has reflected a lot of my schoolwork. When I would write papers, I would always write papers with a conservative twist to it or a Christian twist to it because that's what I wanted to talk about. If my teacher wanted me to write about something, I would always turn it into a paper about God. If my teacher wanted me to write about like a social issue, I always wrote a pro-life paper. I've always been very vocal, and I always was proud of being very vocal. My friends never liked it because I would always like banter, I guess, with my professors or my teachers. I would always have conversations with them after class about politics because that was something that I was into and I was proud of knowing, and I still am proud of knowing. So, in junior college, there was one notable experience that I would like to mention, which I kind of feel like it almost reflects what happened in my pro life paper video. Now, it's not as serious as that, but it kind of reflects it in a way where a professor made assumptions about me and decided to use those assumptions to invalidate my points. So back in 2017, it was fall of 2017, it was in the December month. I was in an English class, a literature English class, where we had to read a lot of poems and reflect on them. And in this class, we had to write a lot of papers about racism. And so I decided to write what she wanted me to write about. In this class, I wasn't really too confident in me arguing with my professor because my professor seemed like she knew a lot of stuff and I didn't want to come off looking like an idiot. So I kind of shut up. I just kind of sat there and I didn't say anything. But it wasn't until a time that my teacher asked us to write a paper about the oppression of women. Now, she had us read a poem by she wrote a poem about if Shakespeare had a sister, and that if Shakespeare had a sister, then the sister wouldn't have been as successful as Shakespeare. Now, when I read this poem, I did not agree with what she said. I didn't think that it was true what she was saying because Wolf was trying to use herself as an example about an unsuccessful woman because she's a woman when she was actually super successful. So when my teacher asked us to write a paper about women oppression and reflecting back on the poem, I decided for myself that, you know what, I want to write a paper about how great women are and the impact that they've made on the world. So I asked my professor if I could spin the topic in that way, and she said yes. And I was super excited about this because this is when I first started getting into the Catholic Church, like history. So I wrote about nuns, I wrote about saints, I wrote about the Virgin Mary, and then I also touched upon many women scientists, many women authors, and their great impact on the world and how they were women, but we recognize them as being these amazing figures today and back then. So this paper, I believe the prompt was around 6 to 8 pages. I ended up probably writing around 8 to 10, maybe even 16 pages. If I find this paper, I will publish it in a blog post and I'll link it down below so you guys can read it. I was really proud about this paper. I wrote about women and I was so excited about it. So in order to turn this paper, we had to meet with my professor for a 15-minute office hour. And at this office hours, she would go through the paper, critique it, give us grammar changes, spelling changes, stuff like that. That was all it was supposed to be. So I attended my 15-minute office hour with her and I gave her my paper, and she had never read my paper prior to this. I want you guys to take note of this. She had never read my paper prior to this. So I give her my paper. She knows what topic I'm writing on, and she reads the first page. She stops and starts like scratching out things. And it wasn't grammatical errors. She's just scratching out things that she didn't agree with. And she said, "This paper doesn't have enough evidence or facts. You need to rewrite your paper." And I was like, "Professor, you've only read the first page. If you continue reading, you'll see that I do back up my stuff. I never say just my opinion. I always back it up with facts." So I was a little caught off guard when she said that my paper didn't have enough evidence. So I said, "Well, if you continue reading." She read to the second page, closed it up, and gave it back to me, scribbled a bunch of things, and said, "You need to rewrite this paper. It doesn't have enough evidence." And I kept saying, "Professor, if you continue reading my paper, you'll see it does have evidence." So she continued reading, and I remember page 4. And page 4 has stuck out to me in my life. Honestly, I feel like every single time I get to a page 4 and something, I always think about my professor. And the reason why I get so hung up on page 4 was because she never continued reading past page 4 of my paper in this office hours. Now, this office hours was supposed to be 15 minutes long. This office hour ended up being an hour and a half long. It actually took over a bunch of different students' office hours, so I'm sorry to them, because my professor and I got into a heated discussion, more heated on her end than my end because I was just a student not trying to argue with my professor. But my professor was doing interesting things that kind of made the meeting not as very welcome, and I'll explain why. So we got to page 4. She closed up the paper and she said that she wasn't going to continue reading it. And I remember saying, "Professor, if you continue reading the paper, you're going to see that I touch upon all these things." And she was very upset that I didn't agree that women were oppressed. And At the time, I will comment on what I look like and I'll show some footage here. I was blonde haired. I had no tan on my body at all. I was wearing like these high waisted shorts, these like little crop tops. I look like you're like maybe typical valley girl. I did not look Hispanic at all. And also my last name is a very Swedish last name. It's not Hispanic at all because my father is Swedish. He's not Mexican. My mother is Mexican. So if I had my mother's last name, then my last name would look Hispanic, but it doesn't. So my name looks like a very like white name. And so when she was reading my paper, she was reading it, she was upset that I wasn't saying that women were oppressed, and all of a sudden she brought up a topic. Now, I'm not going to go into detail about what this topic is, or I'm not going to say what the topic is, just because right now I know it's a sensitive subject in our country, but I'm going to allude to it. Now, mind you, at the time that she's reading my paper is 2017. We're in December of 2017 when she's reading my paper, but she decided to bring up a topic that was relevant in 2012. Now, in 2012, there was a killing of a person. Some say it's self defense, some say it was because of racism. A person was killed by another person, and a lot of people like to say it's about race. And she said, or she believed that it was a race thing. So if you guys want to go into history and Google what I'm talking about, I'm pretty sure that you guys can figure it out. Now, when this happened in 2012, I became very fluent about the topic. I studied it a lot just because my friends and I would talk about it a lot because they were being provided with false information about what had happened, and I was just giving them the truth. So when my professor brought up this topic in 2017, I didn't really know the topic as well as I did back in 2012, but since I had studied it so much 5 years prior, I knew a lot about it. So when she brought it up, she didn't bring it up in a way that was relevant to the paper. Randomly, we're reading the paper, and she's just like, "So, did you think that blah, blah, blah should have been killed?" And I was just like, "What?" Because it had no relevance to the paper. We're talking about two men that were involved, one man that was involved in killing another man. It was two men, and we're talking about a paper about women that has nothing to do with the topic that she was bringing up. So she's like, "So you think this person was supposed to be killed?" I was just like, "What are you talking about?" And she's like, "So you think that there was justification? Do you agree that he should have been killed, that he should have been murdered?" And I was just like, "Whoa, professor." I was like, "Where's this coming from?" And then she started saying, "Well, because you show me that you're privileged and stuff like this." And I remember like being super super caught off guard that this had just happened. And I said, "Well, professor, you know what? I wouldn't necessarily consider myself that. You know, I didn't grow up rich. I grew up in a poor area. I'm Mexican, blah, blah, blah." And I brought up all of this stuff about my demographic and my life because I could tell that she was just calling me just this white girl who had no business talking about anything. And mind you, we weren't even talking about this topic. We were talking about women and oppression. And she brought up this topic about racism. And I figured that she was doing something that a lot of people felt guilty of throughout my college experience when I would talk to people about politics, where they would kind of jump to something. So if I was a conservative, they would just assume I was a sexist, a racist, that I hated everyone, that I was a bigot. And that's what she was getting at. When she found out that I was conservative, especially in my viewpoints shown in my paper, she automatically assumed that I would have been racist. So she brought up a topic that had to do with racism and tried to accuse me of being racist and thinking that someone should be murdered because of their race, which is not true. And this is something that I wouldn't back at all. And so I was very caught off guard, and we ended up getting to a heated discussion about it. I started laying down all these facts because she was trying to accuse me of being racist. And when she found out that I was Hispanic, all of a sudden she retracted what she said. She's like, "Oh, I mean, blah, blah, blah." And she tried changing the subject. And I was like, "You know what? No, you brought this up. Let's talk about it." So we started getting into a more heated conversation, and we went back and forth for an hour and a half. And at the end of the meeting, because I had to leave, I was getting picked up, she said to me, she's like, "You know what? No hard feelings about the conversation we had." And I realized that she was trying to cover her butt because my professor was a white woman telling me, a Hispanic woman, that I was wrong for my beliefs. She just had assumed that I was just like this blonde haired, dumb, white valley girl when I actually wasn't. And she's like, "If you want to talk about this later at a different time, I would love to email you about it. We could talk about this topic later on." But she was kind of covering her butt for calling me or assuming that I was these horrible things that she had made conservatives out to be. And mind you, like I said, my paper was about women oppression, which she didn't like. She ended up actually giving me, I believe, a B on that paper. She didn't like that paper, but she ended up changing the topic and starting accusing me of having these horrible viewpoints, which were not viewpoints I held. Now, I've always been used to people having different viewpoints than me growing up because people think different than you. And also, I live in California, so I don't really think about a lot of the times when teachers would have different opinions than me. But the reason why this one stuck out was because she started calling me out for something that I couldn't change and starting to assume things about me because of my race, because of my demographics. And that was something that she would condemn people for doing, but yet she was doing to myself. And it reminds me of a different professor I had around the same time who, honestly, I wish this woman professor reflected this male professor I had because he went about it the right way. So I took also a mass communications class, and in this class we listened to a lot of NPR and we talked about a lot of liberal things. And since I didn't agree with liberal things, but I felt welcome in the class, I would raise my hand and I would kind of argue with the professor in front of the class. But he always respected my opinion. I remember he wanted us to write a paper about fake news and how Donald Trump is fake news. And I decided to write a paper about how fake news is put out about Donald Trump. And Donald Trump is just calling out the fake news organizations. So I wrote this like long paper about it. And even though he disagreed with me, he said that this paper had a lot of evidence. He really enjoyed it. And even though he did not agree with me, he'd like to talk to me about it. And honestly, we left on a really good foot. Now, I wish that this woman professor did that as well, because then I wouldn't think back about the time when I was in office hours and I was being accused of these things, of being called these things or made to feel like I'd been accused of these things when I actually wasn't anything that she was saying. I wish that she reflected this other professor. So those were my main experiences in junior college. Now they're like little things like every now and then, but I'm not going to even note them because they're not as important. So now let's go to university. Now in university, I didn't really experience too much conversations about politics just because when I got to university, my goal was to get in and get out. That was my focus. I did write papers about what I wanted to write about, but I would always kind of steer away from politics just because I didn't have the energy to do it. I was doing this YouTube channel and my focus was just getting the degree, getting out of there, finding a husband. So it wasn't really focused on arguing. But some notable experiences other than the pro-life experience, which if you guys want to know about my pro-life paper, please check out that video. It's like very thorough. I did a way better job of explaining it than I would do right now. So just check out that video. But some notable experiences were I had two male professors who honestly overstepped a lot, not so much to me, but to the class. And I think that it should be taken note of. So I had a humanities class, and in this humanities class, my professor had this goal to teach the class that 9/11 was done by the government and it wasn't done by the organizations that we believe to have done it. And this was a humanities class, but all class we would spend time learning about 9/11. He would show us videos proving that the planes didn't actually crash into the buildings. He would do all these conspiracy theories. And it was really upsetting because I was in a humanities class. I wanted to learn, but I would spend all my time hearing about how horrible the United States is. And finally, one day, some patriotic guy in my class, he raised his hand and he was just like, Professor, I don't think that this is appropriate for you to be talking about. You know, I lost relatives in 9/11. And my professor did not like the fact that the student was arguing with him. And I remember them arguing for about 45 minutes and then class ended. And then they continued the conversation the next time we met. And the professor basically told the student, you can go report me to the dean, but there's no luck. There's like, you're just gonna get in trouble. Because what had happened was that he shared the story with us and he was all like gloating about it. He's like, yeah, this is what happened to me. I'm like, really, professor, you're proud about this? What had happened was that the semester prior, the professor was doing the same thing, saying that 9/11 was an inside job by the United States, wasting class time, wasting my dollars or their dollars on it. And a student was fed up with it. So he went to the dean and told the dean what was going on in the class. Now, the dean thought it was serious enough that the dean came and sat in on the class. But of course, the professor sees the dean sitting in on the class, so he decided not to talk about that topic that day. He decided to talk about humanities that day. And after that, the dean told the student that he was out of line for reporting the professor of doing these things, and the dean had the student write the professor a apology and apologize to the professor's face, that the student could face being removed from the class because he reported the professor for talking about inappropriate things in the class. So once I heard the story about this professor, I realized, like, you know what, I'm not going to open my mouth to this professor. So he really made the class feel very unwelcome. If you're patriotic, you felt unwelcome. If you lost someone in 9/11, you felt unwelcome, because every day we'd go into class and he would just come up with these conspiracy theories about the United States and how horrible the United States is. And not so much, like, we weren't talking about demographics, we weren't talking about racism, we weren't talking about like classes, we weren't talking about anything. We were talking about 9/11 every single day. Now 9/11 is still a touchy topic. I was born in 97, so I didn't remember the events of 9/11 too well, but there were other people in my class who are older than me who probably do remember it. It's still a touchy subject. It was only 20 years ago, and my professor thought it was appropriate to say that it was an inside job and tell us all these things, and he would show us things about the Pentagon and show us all this stuff. It was so inappropriate. So that was one of those notable experiences. People love that professor, and literally I'm just like, I rated him poorly on the student evaluation thing. Like, he was so inappropriate. But I do have to recognize, and I honestly, college students have to recognize this too, majority of the professors have tenure, so there's no point in reporting them because they're not going to get in trouble for what they do. You're more likely going to get in trouble for reporting them to the dean, like what's happened to that student. So another notable experience was in a persuasion class. I took a persuasion class. This was, I think, 2 semesters ago, and the professor, the first day of class, I remember this vividly. The first day of class, we sat down. He's like, just before we start the class, I just want to know, did anyone in this class vote for Donald Trump? And I was like trying to get up the nerve to raise my hand. Though I'm going to be totally honest with you guys, I didn't vote for President Trump, and it's because I didn't make it to the polls on the day that the election was happening. I would have voted for him. I know that for sure, but I didn't get a chance to vote for him, so I didn't vote for President Trump in 2016. So I didn't, if I raised my hands, I would technically be lying because I didn't actually go vote for him. So before I could raise my hands, my professor's like, good, because we can't have that in here. He's like, just kidding, but yeah, like, thank God none of you guys voted for President Trump. I was like, okay, thank the Lord I didn't raise my hand, because honestly, I didn't want to jeopardize my grade, because it's very scary going to school and having a different opinion, because you can jeopardize your grade for that. I've seen it. I just explained it with the whole situation with the dean and that student. Saying your opinion could jeopardize your grade. So I was very quiet about being conservative in the class. I was very vocal about being Catholic. I mean, my laptop literally says Catholic on it, but I was very like quiet about being conservative in that class because I was scared of like getting critiqued, or I was scared of like having people hate me in the class. Not that I ever think that you should be scared, but honestly, in the world we live in, especially in the college environment, especially in my college, which my college has been featured in many different YouTube videos like done by Fleckus Talks or Slightly Offensive. So if you guys want to see the university I attended and the intolerance of the students there, I'll link the videos of those down below. Honestly, it's disgusting how they treat people there. And so check out those videos. So I was very quiet about it, but he was like, okay, thank you. No one voted for President Trump. So we went through the semester, and honestly, he would say things that were offensive, and a lot of people actually found them offensive because he would say things that were very, very questionable. But there was one time where I kind of just got tired of it, and I was just like, you're wasting my time. You're wasting my money. I would be way better off if I was in the food court eating right now than wasting my time in your class. And it was that one time in class, he was just like, oh my gosh, I have a video to show you guys. So we sat down and we're watching this YouTube video, and it's a YouTube video. It's like a 15-minute reel of making fun of George W. Bush for things he said wrong or quoted incorrectly. And it was just a reel about like idiotic times of George W. Bush. Now, I never make fun of anyone, nor would I ever make fun of a person that was my president, because you know what? I love my country and I support my president even if I don't like them. I didn't really care for President Obama, but I supported him because you know what? I supported my country. I never said not my president. I never was like protesting or rioting like how they do today. I was always supportive of my president. So I was very upset that my professor was showing this video, kind of showing our president that we had for many years and showing how like stupid or dumb he is, or how my professor said that he had a mental illness, which then at that point I thought was majorly inappropriate, because if he really thinks that this president had a mental illness, then why are you making fun of his mental illness in front of the whole class? But anyways, we watched this video of this reel of President George W. Bush making himself look dumb, and I finally was just like, you know what? No, I don't need to be here. I don't need to tolerate this. So I grabbed my stuff and I walked out of the class, and the professor quickly turned off the video because I think at that point he realized how inappropriate it was. But honestly, I don't even know. I don't even know if professors in these schools have radars about what's inappropriate or not. Because, first of all, they'll call you out for being Catholic and start talking about your faith, even if you didn't bring it up. They'll try to accuse you of being racist. They'll talk poorly about the president, and they'll talk about a sensitive subject like 9/11 and say that it was done by the government, and they have no filter on them. So honestly, I don't think professors in these schools have any radar about what's wrong or what's like what they can say, what they can't, because honestly, I think it really has to do with tenure, the fact that they can't get fired. So I think that plays a huge role. So those are the most notable experiences I had in university and in junior college of experiencing some pushback from my professors. But I remember watching these videos and seeing it firsthand about how students were treated on campus. For instance, there is a student on campus who is a part of a conservative group, and this is featured in the Fleckus Talks video, which I'll have linked down below. He was wearing a Make America Great Again hat. I believe he is an immigrant, and he was wearing his Make America Great Again hat, and some students came over and like would flip it off his head and like push people around. And so the school was very intolerant to other people's views. You couldn't have a differing opinion there, and if you did, you literally had a fear for your life going there, because if I were to wear anything like a Make America Great Again hat or something that said I was pro-life, I would be totally scared to walk on campus. Now, I'm a very confident person. I walk not so much in my looks, but in my opinions, because I back it up with facts. I walk around campus with a shirt that says Catholic on it. I walk around campus with a hat that says Catholic on it. My laptop says Catholic on it. But I would be very, very scared to have a Make America Great Again sticker on my laptop, because I know that it would possibly jeopardize my grade, but also I could face like being pushed or bullied or hurt at the school. So guys, I hope you enjoyed this video where I've just given you guys some experiences I had in college. If you guys have ever had these experiences in college, let me know. And you may be wondering, why, Vanessa, why did you make this video? One, you guys asked for it, but two, because a lot of the times when I'm talking to people about my experience in college, this is not very reflective of like what my parents experienced in college, or people 10 years older than me experienced in college. Things have shifted drastically throughout these years, and so I'm coming out being the voice for the students who may be too afraid to talk about it, because I 100% doubt that I'm the only person that experienced this. And honestly, my stuff is probably on the lighter end of the spectrum. I know that some students have experienced way worse, failing grades or just not going to school at all because of like being like slammed on media, or a student at my school who was assaulted because he voted for President Trump or was in support of President Trump. So I just want to kind of put this out there. It's not so much to say my school is horrible or college is horrible, but I think more people should be aware of what's happening in the college system and to be prepared for it, whether or not you want to know about it because you want to take action against it, or you just want to know about it so that you could prepare yourself, so that you choose your battles wisely and know what to say, know who to talk to. But honestly, I don't really have suggestions about who to talk to. If you experience your teacher saying something to you, like trying to accuse you of being racist, or saying something against you being Catholic or something like that, honestly, I don't have tips for you to who to go to, like, because judging by what happened with that student and the dean and the 9/11 instance, they didn't do anything. The student ends up getting in trouble for that. So the only thing that I can tell you is just that you yourself have to stand your ground. You yourself have to be the person protecting yourself. You yourself have to make sure that you're being treated with respect. And sometimes you're just not going to get it. And that's just the world that we live in, where now people don't really like different minds. People don't like people having differing opinions. And if you do have a different opinion, then you're ostracized from the group. So I just want to have people keep this in mind. Let me know if you guys experience anything like this in your life. Let me know. I want to know, because I cannot be the only one that's experienced stuff like this. So let me know. And if you didn't experience stuff like this, let me know about that also. Maybe you think that I'm just like crybaby, that's fine. Let me know what you think about my stories and maybe things that you would have done differently by commenting it down below. If you like this video, guys, please give it a like. And if you didn't like it, you can give it a dislike. If you like me and you want to see more of me, please hit that subscribe button and also turn on that bell notification so you're notified when I post. And I look forward to seeing you guys in my next video. Bye-bye. Bye.